right, let's talk some college basketball with Gary Parrish, CBS. But we're a basketball state now here in the state of Alabama, Gary. We used to talk about football all the time. Dennis Dodd would come on from CBS, but we've transferred over to Gary Parrish now because we're 1-2 in this state in basketball.
It really is something. I mean, we got an obviously massive game on tap, and I'm glad the polls worked out the way they did because there is something, you do remember 1 versus 2. We had one in my hometown, in John Calipari's next to last season that was Bruce Pearl's Tennessee Vols and John Calipari's Memphis Tigers. And that was for a while and perhaps still is, if not the highest rated regular season college basketball game ever on ESPN, one of them. And part of that was because of the 1 versus 2 aspect of it. And now we'll get that this weekend. And it's an awesome thing for your state. And I know it might sound weird for people like, hold on, Alabama and Auburn are really 1-2 in men's basketball. But I never believed you had to pick in sports. I've always thought no matter how successful you are in football or anything else, if you want to be successful in men's basketball and you have the resources to do it, hire somebody great and then free them up to be great. And both Auburn and Alabama have done that with Bruce and Nate, and this is the byproduct of it.
I think most of us grew up with the ACC being dominant, and we would see 8, 9, 10s year in, year out get into the NCAA tournament. We've seen projections with as many as 13 coming out of this league this year. That sounds really heavy. Where do you have the number right now coming out in the SEC?
It's fluid and it changes all the time, but I do think it will set the record. It will have more teams in the NCAA tournament than any conference has ever put. 12 or 13 seems to be the number. I think Dodd's latest bracket was 12 with Jerry Palm's latest bracket was 12 with Texas being his first cut. So that's how close you are to having 13. I've said this all season, and sometimes it sounds hyperbolic, but it's not. It's probably true. Clearly, the SEC is the best league in the country in college basketball this season. Nobody could even try to debate that. It is also possibly the greatest conference we've ever seen. That we've never seen a conference this strong, top to bottom, in strength at the top, depth throughout. This really might be the best version of a men's basketball conference that has ever existed. And so if the follow-up question is, how did we get here? It's not hard to figure out. Transfer waivers and NIL. The SEC has always been overwhelmed with money and backed by people who were willing to throw it around. That's how these schools ended up in scandals for decades. they always had people willing to throw around money. Well, now they can freely and out in the open throw around money. And so you hire great coaches and then you give them big NIL packages to go shop with. And that's how you get most of the best teams in the country and the best league too.
Before we finish planting the tobacco on the road between Auburn and Tuscaloosa for Tobacco Road this weekend, road games tonight. Alabama's at Texas. You've seen this Alabama team. They're not shooting threes at the rate that they shot them last year. They're more at the rim. Do you think there's another level for this Alabama team? Can they survive shooting threes the way they're shooting right now in Nate Oates' offense?
It's hard to play the way he wants to play if you don't make a decent percentage from beyond the arc. And they're obviously not doing that this season. The 33.4% from three. They're still taking about 47% of their field goal attempts from beyond the arc. But I think if you talk to Nate and he had the personnel to do it, he'd like that number to be even higher. So, listen, it's weird to try to talk out of both sides of your mouth with this stuff because it's clearly a flaw with the basketball team, particularly with the way they want to play. But it's not a flaw that has prevented them from quite literally being ranked number 1 in the coaches poll right now. So can they be great without excellent three-point shooting? Yes. And the reason I know that is because they are. They are right now. But if you want to go win 6 games in the NCAA tournament, it can be very difficult to survive a terrible shooting performance if you don't have the elite defense to keep you in a game when you're really missing a lot of shots. And though they are clearly better defensively this season than they were last season, they're still not what anybody would call or label elite defensively. And I tell you this, if Alabama gets knocked out of the NCAA tournament earlier than we think they should, it will probably be a situation where they weren't good enough defensively to edge out a win when they went something like 3 of 24 from 3. I'm making up numbers, but you get the point.
Yes.
Gary Parrish is with us at Gary Parrish CBS on social media. You see him on CBS Sports throughout the college basketball season in the studio there. You can also read him at CBS Sports, and he's up there with our buddy Verno at Grind City Media in Memphis. A rare in studio for Gary. He's in New York all the time this time of year. So to me, like if Bama beats Texas tonight and Auburn wins in Nashville, the bigger thing to me, obviously 1 versus 2, game day being there, all that's great, and we love the publicity here. The winner of that game's in sole possession of the SEC lead, which is not insignificant, Gary, because it's hard to imagine the regular season SEC champion not being the overall number 1 for me. Is that the way you are right now?
That's certainly where we're headed. I don't even think it's a debate right now that Auburn would be the number 1 overall seed. And I think if it's not Auburn ultimately, it will be whoever supplants Auburn at the top of the SEC. I'll keep it simple. If Auburn wins the SEC, Auburn's going to be your number 1 overall seed and should be. And if it's not Auburn, it will probably be another SEC team, Alabama, perhaps Tennessee. I think the top 3 and 4 of the top 5 in my top 25 and 1 daily rankings are SEC schools. The league is obviously deep, but the strength at the top, like they could get 3 number 1 seeds and have, we could be watching first Monday night in April. It's an SEC team against an SEC team for the national championship. All of this stuff's on the table.
If the award was given out today, Cooper Flagg probably your national player of the year, but do you believe Johni Broome can still do enough to become the national player of the year?
Yes. And I would not have answered that question that way a month ago or whenever Johni went out, because on literally the same day he went out, Cooper Flagg went for like 40 something. And it felt like, okay, here we go. And Cooper's been awesome. And I thought, A, Johni would miss more time than he missed, and B, that Cooper Flagg would just run away with it. And neither one of those things are happening. Johni came back after only 2 games, and he's put up big numbers consistently. So I think the main thing working against Johni, and I know this isn't what Auburn fans want to hear, but like the people who vote on these awards, they're humans. And I can see them getting caught up in having the power. If all things are close to equal, having the power and wanting to take advantage of it to make Cooper Flagg the youngest Wooden Award winner in history, because that's what he would be. And I think your average voter probably leans a little that direction. Like you can make history with your Wooden Award vote, or you can just give it to another awesome college basketball player. I really do think that kind of stuff will factor into it. So Johni Broome's going to have to, for him to win the award, he's going to have to go take it from Cooper Flagg and make it to where it's most of us would agree it should be Johni Broome, because I think right now most people would vote for Cooper Flagg, and if it's close, I think most people are going to vote for Cooper Flagg.
Walter Clayton Jr. aside for Florida, their bigs inside, so they can shoot the ball, they move defensively, fluid, they're good offensively, they're just really good bigs for this Florida team. They seem to be a dynamic mix. I know just by you talking, they're good enough because they're in the SEC to win the national championship. Tell me about Todd Golden and that program. This seems to be back-to-back years for me that roster looks good enough to make a run in March.
People sometimes will ask questions like, what's more important, to be great offensively or great defensively if you're trying to win a national championship in college basketball? And the truth is, what the data shows, both. Offense more important than defense, but you usually got to be top 10 in both, top 15 in both, to have a realistic chance to go win a national championship. And Florida is one of the teams that has that right now. They're 4th in offensive efficiency, 9th in defensive efficiency. Just a really solid, good at a lot of stuff basketball teams. And I give them a lot of credit because those guys have been playing through obvious distractions. Their coach was the centerpiece of a Title IX investigation. An assistant coach is also a part of a Title IX investigation. The allegations made against those men are ugly. To be fair to Todd Golden, the investigation has concluded and they found no evidence of Title IX violations. So he will continue to coach that basketball program. But there was a part of me that thought, first off, I didn't think Florida was going to be as good as Florida is. And then when you've got your coach, I mean, the way these things tend to go down, you get those allegations made against you, they launch a formal investigation, you don't survive it. There were a lot of people in the business that did not think Todd Golden was going to survive this. It appears now that he is. And either way, my point is they played through it like it wasn't there. They never looked like a distracted basketball team. And that's one of the several SEC schools that is in strong contention to be a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. They've been terrific. And I don't think Todd Golden's going to win SEC Coach of the Year because I don't think people would be comfortable voting for him given the allegations and given the other coaches. But if you took all that stuff and set it aside, he's obviously a candidate not only for that, but National Coach of the Year as well.
More surprising unranked team as we roll into the middle of February, Gonzaga or UConn?
I'm a little surprised by UConn, but I can explain it. They lost their best pro prospect. They lost 4 starters from last season's team. I can't bring revisionist history here, and I also had UConn in the top 5 in the preseason. But I did it, if I'm being honest, almost out of just respect for the program and the staff. Because when I would talk to Dan Hurley or anybody on his staff, they were really excited about this team. And I just sort of reached a point where I was like, well, they know their team better than I do. On the surface, I don't think you can lose 4 starters and just pick up like, nothing happened. But they think you can, and I guess I should believe them. But what we've seen as this season has unfolded is when Alex Karabin is your best returning player, you're not legitimately a national championship contender. So am I surprised that UConn is unranked right now? Yes. But I'm not surprised that they aren't meeting preseason expectations because they were lofty and somewhat inflated for the reasons I just explained. With the Zags, they're in a position where they're not like in the SEC or the Big Ten where they can make up for their bad losses with good wins in their league. You take a bad loss in the WCC, there's nowhere to get a good one to offset it. So I think ultimately they'll be fine, but they're skating a little closer to the bubble on February 11th than I thought they'd be skating a few months ago.
Well, you spent a lot of time in New York doing the CBS work, as we mentioned. What is if at all, the buzz for Rick Pitino and St. John's there right now? It's kind of fun for guys like us that grew up when the Big East was what it was to see that again, I think.
It's great. And yes, I do. I am in New York more than I'm at home. In the year 2025, I have already spent 25 nights in New York City, and it's only February 11th. So this feels weird just being in my home studio now. But it's electric. I mean, he's captured that city. Like New York likes to think of itself as a basketball city, but they don't have great basketball typically. The Knicks are good right now. St. John's is great right now. And I stay about 20 blocks from the Garden. I'm in Midtown Manhattan every day. And I don't want to overstate it and be like, yeah, and you'll just be walking down 8th Avenue and a Go Johnny's chant breaks out. That's not happening. But that building is on fire every time they're in there, and the crowds are great. The vibes are good. This is I'm glad you put it the way you put it because, I'm 48 years old. And when I was growing up, St. John's mattered.
Yeah.
Carnesecca. Like my almost introduction to college basketball is 1985 Memphis State Tigers in the Final Four with Villanova, Georgetown, and St. John's. That St. John's was a big brand when I was brought to this sport, and they haven't. And I didn't even realize this until it started to become a thing. Now that most people know, if you follow college basketball closely, they haven't won a conference championship, a Big East title since 1992.
Wow,
I mean somebody said that out loud, and I immediately went to double check it because it didn't sound like it was possibly true. 1992 is the last time St. John's won a Big East title, even a share of it. And in year 2, 72-year-old Rick Pitino has them in position to do it.
Crazy.
It's my favorite story in the sport right now. I understood why Louisville needed to move on from Rick after one too many scandals. At some point, it's just like, this happened on your watch again. We've got to make a change. But what I was less understanding of is why somebody else didn't hire him more quickly to do this for them. St. John's finally pulled the trigger, and I don't want to pretend that I knew it was going to happen this quickly, but I was pretty confident it was going to happen, and now we're here.
Nice Mets hat. In Mets fashion, did you pay 40% over market price for that hat?
Oh, wow.
Hey, it is never my money. I know when it comes to the hats, but the Juan Soto money is not my money. As someone who suffered through ownership in the biggest media market in the world, but never treated the team that way, I if we ever get a World Series title and somebody wants to say, yeah, but you had to buy it, fine, I'll buy it. I'm happy to buy it. Ohio State just bought a national championship in football. Somebody just bought a national championship in basketball. If the Mets can buy me a World Series, I'm happy with it. They could have given Juan Soto $400 million. It wouldn't have mattered to me.
All right, go on social media at Gary Parrish CBS, the Eye on College Basketball podcast. Read his work for CBS. See him in studio with the CBS Sports Network throughout the week. As he mentioned, he's always up there doing that. Gary, thank you very much for the time. Enjoy the weekend.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care.
All right, buddy. Gary Parrish with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.